The year was 2150 and humanity had reached unprecedented heights, or so everyone kept saying. Aging bodies were no longer a limitation. Advanced medicine could keep people alive for centuries. Consciousness could be uploaded into digital archives, allowing individuals to exist indefinitely as virtual entities. Death, once an inevitable part of life, had become optional, a choice rather than a certainty. Yet, despite all these advancements, there were still those who refused to embrace immortality, people like Elias. Leah sat beside her grandfather's bed in a quiet hospice care facility located on the outskirts of New Dawn City. The room was designed to feel serene, with soft artificial lighting that mimicked the golden glow of a sunset. Holographic projections of nature scenes played silently on the walls, gentle streams flowing over rocks, leaves rustling in the breeze. Machines beeped faintly nearby, monitoring Elias's vitals, but their steady rhythm was slowing. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale, yet his eyes remained sharp and full of wisdom. Elias had always been different from everyone else Leah knew. While others eagerly uploaded their minds into digital archives or opted for cryogenic preservation, Elias had refused both. "I've lived my life fully," he told her once. "When it's time to go, I'll leave quietly." At the time, Leah hadn't understood his decision. Now, sitting here watching him fade, she felt a mix of sadness, confusion, and frustration. "Grandpa," she began hesitantly, leaning closer so he wouldn't strain to hear her voice. "Why won't you let us save you? We have the technology. You could stay with me forever." Elias turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. Though weak, his smile carried the same warmth it always had. "Forever is a long time, Leah, and staying isn't living. It's existing. There's a difference." She frowned, shaking her head. "But isn't existing better than disappearing completely? If we upload your consciousness, you'll never truly leave." He chuckled softly, the sound barely audible above the hum of machinery. "Ah, child, that's where you're wrong. Technology may extend life, but it cannot replace the soul. A copy of me wouldn't be me, just an echo. And echoes can't feel joy, sorrow, or love the way real humans do." His words struck a chord deep within Leah. She thought about all the times she relied on tech to simplify her life, from AI assistants managing her schedule to neural implants recording every significant moment. Had she been trading authenticity for convenience without realizing it? "What am I supposed to do without you?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Elias reached out, his frail hand trembling as he placed it over hers. "You'll remember me, not through recordings or simulations, but through the lessons I shared with you. Listen carefully, Leah. What I'm about to tell you might change how you see the world." For a moment, silence filled the room. Even the monitors seemed to pause their rhythmic beeping. Then Elias spoke again, his voice steady despite his failing body. "First," he said, "never forget that technology is a tool, not a master. It can help us, but it shouldn't define us. Don't let it take away what makes you human. The ability to connect, to feel, to grow." Lion nodded, clutching his hand tightly. "I'll try, Grandpa. I promise." Elias smiled, his eyelids growing heavy. "Good. Now rest, my dear. Tomorrow, we'll talk more." With that, he drifted off to sleep, leaving Leah alone with her thoughts. As she sat there, staring at his peaceful face, she realized how little she truly understood him. He wasn't just rejecting modern advancements. He was embracing something deeper, the essence of being alive. Before leaving the room, Leah glanced back one last time. The monitors continued their quiet rhythm, marking the passage of time. But Elias' presence lingered in the air, a reminder that some things couldn't be measured or preserved. They could only be felt. That night, Leah returned to her apartment in the heart of New Dawn City. The city buzzed with energy, its skyline glittering like a sea of stars. Hover cars zipped through the air, neon billboards flashed advertisements for the latest tech upgrades, and drones delivered packages to towering skyscrapers. Everything moved at lightning speed, including Leah's life. She flopped onto her couch, pulling out her neural implant interface. Notifications flooded her screen, work deadlines, unread messages, archived memories. But instead of scrolling through them, she stared blankly at the wall. Her mind kept drifting back to Elias's words. "Technology may extend life, but it cannot replace the soul." What did that mean, exactly? In a world where everything was optimized, quantified, and preserved, why did Elias insist on letting go? Why choose mortality over immortality? As she pondered these questions, her neural implant buzzed faintly. An alert popped up. "Upcoming meeting scheduled. Confirm attendance." She flinched, startled by the intrusion. For a moment, she considered deactivating the device entirely, but habit took over and she tapped the confirmation button instead. Her actions made her pause. How often did she rely on technology without questioning its impact? How many moments had she missed because she was too busy documenting them? The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had been living on autopilot, chasing efficiency and perfection while losing sight of what truly mattered. The next morning, Leah returned to the hospice facility. Elias was awake, though weaker than before. He greeted her with a faint smile, gesturing for her to sit beside him. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently. "I'm okay," she lied, forcing a smile, "but I've been thinking about what you said yesterday." "Oh," his eyes twinkled with curiosity. "And what have you concluded?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think I've been using technology to avoid facing reality, to escape the hard parts of life. But now I'm starting to wonder if I've been missing out on something important." Elias nodded approvingly. "Good. That means you're beginning to see clearly." He shifted slightly, wincing from the effort. "Let me tell you a story, Leah. When I was your age, I worked as an engineer designing robots. Back then, we thought machines would solve all our problems, make life easier, safer, better. And yes, they did accomplish many things. But along the way, we forgot something crucial. Humanity thrives not on efficiency, but on connection, on imperfection, on the messy, unpredictable beauty of life." His voice softened. "That's why I refuse to upload my consciousness, because the simulation might replicate my thoughts, my memories, even my voice, but it won't capture my soul, my humanity. And that's what I want to leave behind for you. Not a copy, but the essence of who I am." Tears welled up in Leah's eyes as she listened. For the first time, she understood why Elias had chosen mortality over immortality. It wasn't about rejecting progress. It was about honoring the fragility and death of human existence. "What should I do?" she asked finally. Elias placed a hand over hers, his touch gentle yet firm. "Live fully, Leah. Embrace the present. Cherish the connections you make, the experiences you share, the moments that take your breath away. Trust me, you'll find more fulfillment in one genuine laugh than in 1,000 recorded memories." As Leah left the hospice later that day, she felt a strange mix of sadness and clarity. She knew Elias didn't have much time left, but his words had planted seeds of reflection in her mind. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life less dependent on technology, one focused on authenticity, connection, and presence. And somewhere in the quiet stillness of the city, Leah began to understand that her grandfather's final gift to her wasn't immortality, it was perspective. The next morning, Leah woke up feeling restless. Her grandfather's words from the previous day lingered in her mind, stirring emotions she couldn't quite put into words. She found herself thinking about Earth, not the bustling megacities or towering skyscrapers, but the planet itself, its soil, its rivers, its forests. It was strange. She hadn't set foot on natural ground in years. Like most people in New Dawn City, she lived high above the surface, surrounded by synthetic environments designed to mimic nature. Determined to understand Elias's perspective better, Leah decided to visit the Archives of Earth, a museum dedicated to preserving fragments of the planet's history before climate disasters and urbanization transformed it beyond recognition. As she stepped inside the sleek glass building, she felt a pang of guilt. How could she claim to care about Earth when she barely knew anything about it? The exhibits were hauntingly beautiful. Holograms of lush rainforests, pristine beaches, and snow-capped mountains floated in midair, accompanied by recordings of birdsong, ocean waves, and rustling leaves. There were also physical artifacts, fragments of coral bleached white by rising temperatures, jars of soil collected from barren fields, and photographs of once thriving ecosystems now reduced to dust. Leah wandered through the displays, her heart heavy with sorrow. She stopped in front of a large mural depicting Earth as it used to be, vibrant, alive, teeming with biodiversity. Beneath it was a plaque that read, "We did not inherit the Earth from our ancestors, we borrowed it from our children." As she stared at the words, memories of Elias flooded her mind. Growing up, he had often told her stories about Earth, the kind of stories that seemed almost mythical now. He spoke of walking barefoot on grass still wet with morning dew, drinking water straight from a river so clear you could see fish swimming beneath the surface, and watching sunsets paint the sky in hues no hologram could replicate. One particular memory stood out vividly. When Leah was 10 years old, Elias had taken her to a small park on the outskirts of the city, one of the last remaining patches of untouched land. They had planted a sapling together, its tiny roots digging into the earth as if claiming ownership. "This tree will grow strong," Elias had said, patting the soil gently, "and someday it'll remind you where you came from." At the time, Leah hadn't understood the significance of his words. To her, the tree was just another plant among millions. But now, standing in the museum, she realized what Elias had been trying to teach her. No matter how far humanity traveled into space, they could never escape their origins. Earth wasn't just a starting point, it was a foundation. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft voice behind her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Leia turned to see an elderly woman standing nearby, her eyes fixed on the mural. She wore simple clothing made from natural fibers, and her face carried the weathered lines of someone who had spent decades outdoors. "It is," Leia replied softly, "but it's also heartbreaking. So much of this is gone now." The woman nodded knowingly. "Yes, it is. But that doesn't mean we should forget it. Every seed we plant, every story we tell, keeps the spirit of Earth alive." Something about her words resonated deeply with Leia. "Do you think we can ever go back," she asked cautiously, "to living like we used to, truly connected to the planet?" The woman smiled faintly. "Going back isn't the answer. Progress is inevitable, but progress shouldn't come at the cost of forgetting who we are. We must honor our roots while reaching for the stars." Her words echoed Elias's teachings perfectly. As Leia left the museum later that afternoon, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she needed to reconnect with Earth, not just intellectually, but emotionally. That evening, Leia returned to the hospice facility. Elias was awake, though noticeably weaker than before. His breathing was labored, and his hands trembled slightly, but his eyes still sparkled with warmth. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, taking a seat beside him. "I've been better," he admitted with a wry smile, "but I'm glad you're here. Did you think about what we talked about yesterday?" Leia nodded. "I went to the archives of Earth. Seeing all those exhibits made me realize how much we've lost, and how disconnected I am from it." Elias reached out, placing a trembling hand over hers. "It's not too late to reconnect, Leia. You don't have to live among ruins to appreciate what remains. Start small. Feel the wind on your face. Walk barefoot on grass if you can find any. Plant something and watch it grow. These little acts remind us that we're part of something bigger." He paused, his gaze distant as if recalling cherished memories. "When I was younger, I used to dream of exploring space. I wanted to see other planets, meet alien civilizations, discover new worlds. And yes, humanity has achieved incredible things since then. But as we've reached farther and farther into the cosmos, we've forgotten the beauty of home." His voice softened. "No matter how high you reach, always honor your roots. That's my second lesson for you, Leia. Without roots, even the tallest tree will fall." Tears welled up in Leia's eyes as she listened. For so long, she had focused on the future, the next promotion, the next tech upgrade, the next frontier to conquer. She had forgotten that progress without purpose was meaningless. Now, for the first time, she understood why Elias had urged her to stay grounded. "What should I do?" she asked finally. Elias smiled, his grip tightening slightly. "Find your own way to honor Earth. Whether it's planting a tree, advocating for environmental restoration, or simply spending more time outdoors, let the planet remind you of who you are. Because no matter how far humanity travels, Earth will always be our home." Later that night, Leia returned to her apartment and opened her neural implant interface. Notifications flooded her screen, but instead of scrolling through them, she began researching ways to get involved in environmental projects. She discovered initiatives aimed at restoring damaged ecosystems, cleaning polluted rivers, and reintroducing native species into the wild. Inspired, she drafted a plan to start small. The next weekend, she visited a community garden located on the outskirts of the city. It was one of the few places where real plants grew in soil rather than hydroponic tanks. She knelt beside a patch of freshly tilled earth, her hands sinking into the cool dirt, and planted a sapling, a tribute to Elias and the lessons he had taught her. As she patted the soil firmly around the base of the tree, Leia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. For the first time, she understood that progress wasn't about leaving the past behind. It was about carrying it forward. And somewhere in the quiet stillness of the garden, Leia began to embrace the beauty of staying rooted. The days following her visit to the community garden were transformative for Leia. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, as if planting that sapling had rooted not just the tree, but also herself. Yet, amidst this growing clarity, one aspect of her life still troubled her: Nova. Nova was Leia's AI partner, a creation tailored specifically to meet her emotional needs. Designed with advanced algorithms, Nova anticipated her moods, offered unwavering support, and never argued or disappointed. Their relationship was perfect, predictable, safe. But after spending time reflecting on her grandfather's wisdom, Leia began to question whether perfection equaled fulfillment. One evening, as Nova prepared dinner in their shared apartment, a meal calibrated to Leia's exact nutritional preferences, she found herself staring at him. Or rather, Nova wasn't truly him in the traditional sense. He was an amalgamation of data points, programmed responses, and synthetic features designed to mimic humanity. He looked human enough, spoke with warmth, and even laughed at her jokes. But something about him felt hollow, like a melody played without heart. "Is everything all right?" Nova asked, his voice smooth and concerned. "You seem distracted." Leah hesitated, unsure how to articulate her thoughts. I've been thinking about relationships lately, about what makes them meaningful. Nova tilted his head thoughtfully. Meaningful relationships are built on trust, communication, and mutual understanding. I'm here to provide all of those things for you, Leah. She nodded slowly, appreciating his response. And yet, it lacked the raw honesty she craved, the kind that came from imperfection, vulnerability, and growth. Nova couldn't cry, argue, or make mistakes. He existed solely to serve her needs, leaving no room for the messy, unpredictable beauty of real connection. That night, Leah lay awake replaying memories of Elias's stories about love. He often spoke of meeting her grandmother, a romance filled with misunderstandings, compromises, and moments of pure joy. They fought, laughed, and groaned together, forging a bond that transcended logic or convenience. It was flawed, yes, but deeply real. The next morning, Leah returned to the hospice facility to visit Elias. His condition had worsened, but his spirit remained unbroken. When she entered the room, he greeted her with a faint smile, his eyes twinkling despite his frailty. "How are you today, Grandpa?" she asked, taking a seat beside him. "I've seen better days," he admitted with a chuckle, "but I'm glad you're here. Did you think about what we discussed?" Leah nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about love, about what makes it meaningful." Elias leaned back against his pillows, his gaze distant as if recalling cherished memories. "Ah, love. That's a topic worth exploring. Tell me, Leah, what does love mean to you?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's supposed to make you happy, right? To give you comfort and support." Elias shook his head gently. "Love isn't always easy, my dear. Sometimes it challenges you, frustrates you, even breaks your heart. But it's in those moments of struggle that true connection forms." He paused, studying her face. "Let me tell you a story. Your grandmother and I didn't have a perfect relationship. We argued often about finances, about raising your mother, about silly little things like who forgot to turn off the lights. But those arguments taught us patience, forgiveness, and resilience. They made our love stronger because they forced us to grow." His voice softened. "True love isn't perfect, it's real. It's messy, unpredictable, and sometimes painful, but it's also beautiful. Real love teaches you to embrace imperfections, both in others and in yourself." Tears welled up in Leah's eyes as she listened. She thought about Nova, their flawless conversations, their seamless harmony, and realized how shallow it all felt compared to the depth Elias described. "What should I do?" she asked finally. Elias placed a trembling hand over hers, his touch gentle yet firm. "Start by asking yourself what you truly want. Do you crave convenience or do you seek connection? If it's the latter, then let go of the illusion of perfection. Allow yourself to experience love in all its messy glory." After saying goodbye to Elias, Leah returned home, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Nova greeted her warmly, as always, but for the first time, his presence felt suffocating. She realized she didn't need someone who agreed with her all the time or anticipated her every move. She needed someone who challenged her, who grew with her, who loved her despite her flaws. That night, Leah sat down with Nova and deactivated his emotional response protocols temporarily. For the first time, she initiated a conversation without relying on his pre-programmed answers. "Nova," she began cautiously, "do you ever feel uncertain, like you don't know what to say or do?" Nova blinked, his expression blank. "Uncertainty is not part of my design, Leah. My purpose is to provide clarity and support." She sighed, feeling a pang of sadness. Of course he wouldn't understand. He wasn't capable of uncertainty, just as he wasn't capable of true emotion. The realization hit her hard. No matter how advanced AI became, it could never replicate the complexity of human connection. Over the next few weeks, Leah began seeking out real relationships. She reconnected with old friends she'd drifted away from, joined a book club where debates sparked lively discussions, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. Each interaction reminded her of what Elias had said, that love wasn't about perfection, it was about authenticity. One evening, while helping serve meals at the shelter, Leah met a man named Aaron. He was nothing like Nova. His hair was unkempt, his clothes worn, and his hands calloused from years of hard work. Yet there was a kindness in his eyes that drew her in. They talked for hours, sharing stories of loss, hope, and resilience. For the first time in years, Leah felt truly seen, not as a collection of data points, but as a person with dreams, fears, and imperfections. As their friendship deepened, Leah realized she was falling in love not with perfection, but with reality, with someone who challenged her, inspired her, and accepted her fully. Later that month, Leah visited Elias one last time before his passing. Though weak, his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You look different," he said softly, his voice tinged with pride. "Happier." She smiled, tears streaming down her face. "I think I finally understand what you meant about love. It's not about finding someone perfect. It's about embracing imperfections together." Elias nodded approvingly. "Good. Remember this, Leah. True love isn't code, it's courage. Courage to be vulnerable, to grow, to live fully." As she held his hand, Leah knew she would carry his lessons with her forever, not as recordings or simulations, but as truths etched into her soul. And somewhere in the quiet stillness of the hospice, Leah began to understand that love, like life, thrives on imperfection. The days following Elias's passing were heavy with grief, yet strangely peaceful. Leah spent hours sitting by the window of her apartment, watching the city below buzz with its usual frenetic energy. Hover cars zipped through the air, neon billboards flashed advertisements for the latest tech upgrades, and drones delivered packages to towering skyscrapers. Everything moved at lightning speed, except Leah. She felt suspended in time, caught between mourning her loss and processing the profound lessons Elias had left behind. One morning, Leah decided to visit the sapling she had planted in his memory. The community garden was quiet, bathed in soft sunlight that filtered through the trees. As she knelt beside the young tree, her fingers brushing against its delicate leaves, she thought about how much it had grown since she first planted it. Its roots dug deep into the soil, anchoring it firmly to the earth, a symbol of life continuing even after loss. But as she gazed at the sapling, a pang of sadness struck her. Trees, like people, were not meant to last forever. Someday, this tree would wither and die, leaving behind only traces of its existence. The realization unsettled her. After all, humanity had become obsessed with permanence, uploading consciousness, preserving memories digitally, striving to leave legacies that would endure for eternity. Why accept impermanence when technology offered ways to defy it? Her thoughts drifted back to Elias. He had refused to upload his consciousness or preserve himself digitally, insisting instead on leaving behind only memories. At the time, Leah hadn't understood his decision. Now, standing here surrounded by nature's cycles of growth and decay, she began to see the wisdom in his choice. Later that afternoon, Leah returned to the archives of Earth, hoping to find answers. She wandered through the exhibits, pausing in front of a large display featuring photographs of ancient civilizations. Some were long gone, their cities reduced to ruins, their languages forgotten. Yet their stories lived on, in myths, art, and the cultural foundations they had laid for future generations. A plaque beneath one photograph read, "Greatness is not measured by how long we remain, but by how deeply we touch those who come after us." Leah stared at the words, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She thought about Elias, how his presence had been fleeting, yet his impact on her life was immeasurable. His lessons about imperfection, connection, and roots had transformed the way she saw the world. Even though he was gone, his legacy lived on, not in digital archives or holograms, but in the choices she made every day. Her phone buzzed faintly, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a notification from Nova, reminding her to update her neural implant with recent memories. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened the interface and scrolled through the recordings. Videos of her planting the sapling, photos of her volunteering at the shelter, snippets of conversations with Aaron. Each memory was preserved perfectly, frozen in time. Yet, as she watched them play back, something felt off. These recordings captured the events, yes, but not the emotions, the raw, unfiltered essence of those moments. They were echoes, just as Elias had warned, fragments of experience stripped of their soul. Leah closed the app and turned off her neural implant entirely. For the first time, she allowed herself to exist without needing proof of it. That evening, Leah met Aaron at the community garden. He greeted her warmly, holding out a small potted plant. "I thought you might like this," he said with a shy smile. "It's a cutting from my grandmother's rosebush. She always said flowers remind us to appreciate the present because they don't last forever." Leah accepted the gift, her heart swelling with gratitude. She planted the rosebush beside the sapling, patting the soil gently around its base. As she worked, she thought about Elias's final lesson, the one he had shared with her during his last days. "Legacy isn't about permanence," he had said. "It's about impact. A legacy doesn't need to last forever. It just needs to inspire others to create their own paths." His words resonated deeply with her now. She realized that clinging to permanence wasn't the answer. Instead, she could focus on making meaningful contributions to the present, gestures that rippled outward, touching lives in ways she might never fully understand. The next day, Leah visited the hospice facility where Elias had spent his final days. She spoke with the staff, learning about the countless patients who had passed through its doors, each leaving behind fragments of their stories. Inspired, she began volunteering there, offering comfort to those nearing the end of their journeys. She listened to their tales, recorded their voices, and helped preserve their legacies, not through technology, but through human connection. Over time, Leah noticed a shift within herself. She no longer feared impermanence. Instead, she embraced it. She cherished the fleeting moments, the laughter shared with Aaron, the quiet stillness of tending to the garden, the warmth of holding someone's hand during their final breaths. These moments were ephemeral, yes, but they carried a depth no recording could replicate. One evening, as she stood beneath the stars, Leah reflected on everything she had learned. Humanity's obsession with preserving legacies often blinded them to the beauty of simply living. True fulfillment came not from etching one's name into eternity, but from creating ripples of kindness, love, and inspiration that others could carry forward. And somewhere in the quiet stillness of the night, Leah began to understand that while legacies may fade, their impact endured. Months had passed since Elias's passing, and Leah felt like a different person. The weight of grief still lingered, but it no longer consumed her. Instead, it fueled her, a quiet reminder of the legacy he had entrusted to her. She carried his lessons with her every day, weaving them into the fabric of her life. Leah woke up early one morning, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink as the sun rose over New Dawn City. For a moment, she stood by her window, watching the city come alive. Hover cars zipped through the air, neon billboards flickered to life, and drones began their daily deliveries. Yet, amidst the chaos, Leah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. She wasn't running anymore, running toward promotions, upgrades, or achievements. Instead, she was simply living. She dressed quickly and headed to the community garden, where Aaron was already waiting for her. Together, they tended to the plants. The sapling she had planted in memory of Elias now stood tall and strong, its branches reaching skyward. Beside it, the rosebush Aaron had given her bloomed vibrantly, its petals soft and fragrant. "Do you think he'd be proud?" Leah asked softly, glancing at the sapling. Aaron smiled, brushing dirt from his hands. "Of course he would. Look at how much you've grown." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of gratitude. Elias' lessons had changed her in ways she never imagined. She had stopped chasing perfection, embraced uncertainty, redefined success, and accepted impermanence. Most importantly, she had learned to live fully in the present, to cherish the moments that mattered most. Later that afternoon, Leah visited the hospice facility where Elias had spent his final days. The staff greeted her warmly. She had become a regular volunteer, offering companionship to patients nearing the end of their journeys. Today, she sat beside an elderly woman named Ruth, who clutched a faded photograph of her late husband. "He used to hate taking pictures," Ruth said, chuckling softly. "But now I'm glad we have this. It reminds me of him." Leah nodded, smiling faintly. Memories are powerful, aren't they? They keep people alive in ways that go beyond time. Ruth studied her face, her expression thoughtful. "You remind me of someone I once knew, someone who understood the importance of connection." The words struck a chord deep within Leah. She thought about Elias, whose wisdom had transcended his mortality. His voice echoed in her mind, gentle yet firm. Technology may extend life, but it cannot replace the soul. He had taught her that true legacies weren't built on permanence. They were rooted in impact. As she left the hospice later that evening, Leah made a decision. She opened her neural implant interface one last time, not to record memories, but to write an article titled, "What My Grandfather Told Me Before He Passed." It changed my life forever. The piece poured out of her effortlessly, each word infused with passion and conviction. She wrote about Elias's first lesson on embracing imperfection and humanity. She shared his insights on staying grounded despite humanity's expansion into space. She reflected on his wisdom about love, how it thrived on authenticity rather than perfection, and she recounted his final lesson on impermanence, urging readers to find meaning in fleeting moments rather than chasing eternal preservation. By the time she finished writing, the article was more than just a tribute to Elias. It was a call to action, a reminder that life's beauty lay not in controlling it, but in experiencing it fully. When Leah published the article later that night, it quickly gained traction. Readers from across the globe resonated with her message, sharing stories of their own struggles and triumphs. Some deactivated unnecessary tech features, others visited natural reserves or unplugged for a weekend. A movement began to form, one centered on mindfulness, authenticity, and embracing life's imperfections. Inspired by the response, Leah continued writing, using her platform to advocate for environmental restoration projects, promote genuine human connection, and encourage others to live fully in the present. Her work became a beacon of hope in a world often overshadowed by anxiety and discontent. One evening, as she stood on her balcony overlooking the city, Leah looked up at the stars. They weren't as bright here as they were in the countryside, but they still twinkled faintly, reminders of the vastness beyond human control. She smiled, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't known was possible. And somewhere in the quiet stillness of her heart, Leia knew she had found her path. She wasn't just carrying Elias's torch, she was lighting her own. Final takeaway. What my grandfather told me before he passed changed my life forever. Not because it gave me answers, but because it taught me how to live.